Hollywood has its fair share of hits, but for every blockbuster, there's a flop waiting in the wings. These 15 movies bombed so hard they didn't just fail at the box office, they took down entire studios with them. Yes, it's hard to believe, but Frank Capra's 5-time Oscar-nominated picture, that's as integral to Christmas as Santa Claus, was largely responsible for bankrupting its studio. Most viewers gave the movie a wide berth upon its original December 1946 release. Having barely managed to recoup their $3.18 million production costs, the fledgling Liberty Films had no option but to accept an acquisition bid from Paramount Pictures. Samuel Bronston Productions spent a fortune recreating the 92,000 square meter Roman Forum that once served as the heart of the ancient city, in turn building Hollywood's largest ever outdoor set. But, proving that size doesn't always matter, the Sophia Loren picture only managed to earn back a quarter of its $19 million budget. Just 3 months after its release, Samuel Bronston's very own empire fell into bankruptcy. Heaven's Gate boasted a star-studded cast including Christopher Walken, Jeff Bridges, John Hurt, and Willem Dafoe. The movie couldn't have had a better pedigree, but its slow-burning story of a late 19th century battle between European immigrants and native cattle ranchers never sounded like guaranteed box office gold. The budget ballooned to $44 million, 6 times more than its original estimated cost. Disastrously, it recouped just $3.5 million, causing United Artists to go bankrupt and to subsequently be sold off to MGM. Larger-than-life entertainment impresario Lou Grade once famously remarked that it would have been cheaper to lower the Atlantic than recreate the titular vessel and raise the Titanic. He probably had a point. ITC Entertainment spent $40 million on the film, most of it on the impressive scale model of the ship. While the spectacle of raising the Titanic was worth seeing, the rest of the movie didn't live up to the hype, earning only $7 million at the box office. The financial failure forced ITC to sell off its distribution arm to avoid sinking entirely. Francis Ford Coppola's first movie of the 80s undoubtedly looked good. The filmmaker spent the majority of its then colossal $27 million budget on pioneering visual techniques and a faithful recreation of Nevada's McCarran International Airport. But fans of his earlier testosterone-fueled work were left completely baffled by a candy-colored Vegas musical rom-com, and the film only pulled in a dismal $638,000 at the box office. Coppola's own studio, Zoetrope, never recovered from the gigantic loss, and in 1992 it filed into bankruptcy. After a series of flops, the Ladd Company was expecting space race tale The Right Stuff to reverse their commercial fortunes. But despite 4 Academy Awards and near-universal critical acclaim, the 1983 picture fell $6 million short of recouping its $27 million budget. Although the first Police Academy movies gave the studio a brief reprieve, the Ladd Company's earlier way-off-the-mark predictions proved to be too significant to overcome. When the studio was no longer aligned with Warner Brothers, its 3 founders essentially opted to put the company into hibernation for more than a decade. Former Disney executives James L. Stewart and Rich Irvine hit the ground running with their Aurora Productions Company's first venture that grossed twice its budget in 1982. But their live-action output struggled to replicate this early success, as their next 4 films all flopped pretty hard. By 1990, the company was pinning all its hopes on a $6 million volleyball dramedy starring Thomas C. Howell titled Side Out. Perhaps unsurprisingly, this 6th feature failed to stop the rot, raking in just over $400,000 and sending Aurora Productions into bankruptcy. The knives were already out before the film even made it to cinemas thanks to a troubled production, where everything from the casting to the script was constantly made to walk the plank. Cutthroat Island missed the domestic top 10 entirely in its opening weekend, eventually crawling to a $10 million gross on a whopping $98 million budget. Dubbed Hollywood's biggest ever flop by the Guinness World of Records, the movie drove Coralco Pictures, the studio that brought us Terminator 2 and Total Recall, into bankruptcy. Having rescued his career from the doldrums with Pulp Fiction, John Travolta then squandered it again 6 years later with his self-indulgent love letter to Scientology. To add insult to injury, he even put $5 million of his own money into the unintentionally hilarious project. Battlefield Earth only covered the first half of Ron Hubbard's novel. A record-breaking Razzie haul and a financial loss of $44 million quickly squashed to the idea of a sequel, and Studio Franchise Pictures ended up in court and ultimately faced insolvency. Fox Animation, fresh off the success of Anastasia, seemed poised for greatness, But just 3 years later, they were on the brink of collapse. Titan AE, their final film, was a post-apocalyptic sci-fi adventure that stumbled into theaters already looking doomed. Despite A-list voice talent like Drew Barrymore and Matt Damon, it only managed to pull in $37 million, not even covering half its budget. The disappointing performance led 20th Century Fox to quickly shut down the animation studio, cutting ties just a week after the film's release. The Spirits Within is widely considered to be one of the few video game movies that doesn't completely taint the legacy of its 32-bit source material, and it earned a respectable $85.1 million at the box office, too. But with approximately 200 people working painstakingly for 4 years to bring world-saving scientist Dr. Sid and Aki Ross to photorealistic life, its cost soared to more than $137 million, leaving production company Square Pictures squarely in the red. After Space Jam, Warner Brothers tried to bring Bugs Bunny and the crew back to the spotlight with Looney Tunes back in action. But despite giving the iconic character center stage, the film grossed just $68.5 million on an $80 million budget, showing that the appetite for retro animation had waned. Production was shut down on the new shorts, and in 2004, Warner Brothers feature animation was folded. New Line Cinema were no doubt hoping to launch a money-spinning, Harry Potter-style franchise with their adaptation of Philip Pullman's The Golden Compass. They certainly threw enough money at the project, a studio record of $180 million to be exact, and looking at its worldwide box office take of $372 million, you might have expected them to make a tidy profit. Unfortunately, to help finance the movie, bosses had signed away the film's international rights, and with only $70 million of its gross coming from domestic territory, New Line was forced to get into bed with Warner Brothers Pictures just to survive. Remember when Nicolas Cage movies still made it to theaters? Bangkok Dangerous actually topped the US box office in 2008, though it did so with the lowest total since Dickie Roberts, former child star, 5 years earlier. The contract killer thriller quickly plummeted, ending with a disappointing $15 million domestic gross. Even with an international boost of $27 million, it couldn't cover its budget. The flop led to the closure of its co-production company, Virtual Studios, as its backers moved on to other ventures. When it comes to box office disasters, Mars Needs Moms is in a league of its own. The performance capture animation cost $150 million to produce, yet failed to recoup even a third of this figure at the worldwide box office. Not only did this make the Alien Abduction Tale co-producers Walt Disney's biggest ever financial loss, but it also caused Robert Zemeckis' Image Movers production company to pull the plug on its digital offshoot after just 2 releases.